Hey, everybody, welcome back to the I Play 2 podcast. I'm your host, Rob Adler. This week, outside hitter for the San Diego Mojo, Lauren Harrison, joins the show. In high school at Woodward Academy in Georgia, Lauren was a two-time Player of the Year and was a 2017 Under Armour first-team All-American. At Baylor, she was a three-time All-Big 12 selection, and she led the Bears in kills in 2022. Lauren spent last season in Switzerland, where she led the Swiss League in both points per set and total points. Her brother, Christian Harrison, was an all-region high jumper and triple jumper in high school and went on to play college basketball at the University of Georgia. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm not too bad. I hear you're just down the road on I-35 in San Antonio from me.
Yep, down here in San Antonio, enjoying the hot weather, even though it's November.
Nothing like Texas, huh, where it's 80 degrees in November.
Yes, exactly.
So are you excited for your first season in San Diego with the Pro Volleyball Federation?
Yes, I'm really excited. Last year, like you said, I played in Switzerland, and that was a great experience, just living in a different country, getting to see how cultures are in different places. So that was definitely a great experience. But I'm really looking forward to being in the same country, not too far from my friends and family, just a 3 hour flight versus a 9 hour flight. So definitely looking forward to being in San Diego and just getting to train with the players that they brought on and the coaches and the staff. And just living in San Diego, I've heard, is such a great thing. The beaches, the weather that's always 70 degrees or not hot like Texas, basically. So definitely excited for that.
I got a couple of follow-ups on that. And the first one is when you get to San Diego, you got to go get yourself a TKO taco at the Sandbar. It's the best taco you'll ever have.
I'll definitely have to try that out because I love tacos.
San Diego is a favorite place of mine. I'll actually be in Mission Beach in February.
Oh, nice. We have to come to a Mojo game.
Hook me up and I'll be there.
All right, we'll do.
And the second thing is I had a guest on named Carl Klingberg who played hockey in Switzerland and loved it there. Could you kind of talk a little bit more about playing there, the Swiss culture and that kind of stuff?
Playing there, I would say it's a little different from the US. You're playing with a lot of girls who are older, more experienced, so you really have to adjust your game to be smarter in how you play. So I think that was a really important part of my growth there, just growing my game in ways that I hadn't had the chance to before. And in terms of culture, I believe that in Switzerland, they really take the time to just enjoy life. On Sundays, everything is closed. Like people are just out and about walking around, or they're at the lake, or they're just enjoying time with their family. And I think that is something that I really, really loved about Switzerland, how they enjoy life and they live a slow paced life. And I feel like sometimes that slips away from us here in the US. So I would say that is definitely one of my most memorable and favorite parts about Switzerland, just enjoying and being in the moment.
From being there, what was a favorite place that you got to visit, or maybe like a tourist attraction or something like that?
I would say my favorite place to visit was Zermatt. It's like a ski town, and it's where the Matterhorn is, and it's like the mountain that you see on the Toblerone chocolate, like the gold triangle chocolates. So that was definitely my favorite place that I visited. And being in my town, which was Chazot, it was about 15 minutes away from Lausanne. And Lausanne had a really pretty lakefront and just shops and a lot of stuff to do. So I would say Lausanne and Zermatt were my all-time favorites in Switzerland.
Did you get a chance to ski any part of the Matterhorn?
No, unfortunately, we couldn't ski as a part of our contract just in case injuries were to occur. So no skiing, but I did take the gondola all the way to the top of the mountain and I got to see the Matterhorn like really close up and it's just absolutely gorgeous.
Wow, it was part of the contract. That kind of sounds like the NBA rule where you can't ride a motorcycle.
But I can see why though. Accidents sometimes happen with skiing and I guess they just didn't want to take the risk.
How did the opportunity in Switzerland come about?
It's actually a funny story because after my season ended at Baylor in December 2022, I was like, okay, I'm done playing volleyball. I was ready to put my shoes away and just enter the workforce and hopefully get a job in like marketing or something of that nature. And I started applying for jobs that spring because I was planning for it to be my last semester there. And then things just didn't go the way that I wanted to go. I kind of missed playing volleyball and I didn't really have an interest in entering the workforce anymore at that moment. And so I signed with an agent in April and then we began talking. And then 2 weeks later, the team in Switzerland, which was Chazot, reached out to my agent and offered me to play with them that upcoming season. And I was like, sure. I was eager to play again because I hadn't played that whole semester, so I missed it. And then the fact that I could go play in Switzerland, which is an extremely beautiful place, and I had visited once before when I was younger, and I really liked it. So everything just really aligned for me, and that's how it came about, kind of last minute, but it worked out for the best, and it was just an amazing experience overall.
I didn't know you had been to Switzerland before. What do you remember about that trip when you were younger?
When I was younger, we went to Zurich, which is on the eastern part, and I was playing on the western part. So Zurich was a little bit different from where I was playing, but it was still very pretty. Both regions, east and the west, have really good food. But it's kind of interesting that when you're in Zurich, you hear mostly German, but when you're in Lausanne or you're in Geneva, it's a French speaking side. So it was interesting to see that in the same country, there are two different sides that speak two different languages. But overall, when I was little, I always told myself I want to come back here. So when the opportunity came to live there and play volleyball, I was like, why not? This is the perfect opportunity for me.
Speaking of the language, was there a language barrier for you, or did you know how to speak French and or German?
Yes, there was a language barrier because I had never taken any French courses. Fortunately, my fiance's first language is French, so he was able to help me learn some phrases and some words and stuff before I went there. So that made it easier. But I would say it was definitely a language barrier at first. But my club actually offered us French lessons as a part of our contract. So I got to learn French. It's easier to learn it when you're surrounded by it all the time. So that definitely helped me learn a bit faster. But fortunately, our coach and all my teammates actually, they spoke English fluently and all the practices and meetings and things were in English. So that definitely made it a lot easier.
So, what made you decide you wanted to come back stateside and play pro volleyball in the US?
I would say I just miss being close to my family. I'm a big family person, so it was definitely a challenge living 8 hours away on a flight and then having the time difference of 6 to 7 hours. So that was a challenge for me. And then when the opportunity arose for US volleyball, I just was like, wow, I think this is the perfect opportunity for me to still play, but also be in the same country as my family. So that way they can come to my games. It's easier for them to watch it. And then just playing in the country where I started playing and grew up and my love for volleyball started. So that is a big reason for why I wanted to come back and play in the States.
Taking a bit of a step back here for a minute and talking about family, how competitive were you and your brothers growing up? Because Christian was a track athlete, played basketball, your other brother played college soccer. How competitive were you guys as a family?
I would say we were definitely very competitive. I believe that growing up with two older brothers, being the youngest and a girl, I definitely had to have a little bit of a tougher skin. So I think that I am competitive and I like to compete now just because of my environment when I was growing up. They definitely pushed me to be the best that I can be. I remember when we were little, we would always race in the front yard and I'd always say, I'm going to beat you guys. I'm going to beat you guys. I never beat them, but I had the right mindset. So I think how I grew up with two older brothers really pushed me to be a competitive athlete and be able to grow in ways that I'm very grateful for.
Did you play other sports than volleyball growing up?
So I actually started off playing tennis, and I played tennis for about 5 or 6 years. And my goal was to actually play tennis in college. And then I kind of got tired of the individual sport and I wanted to switch to a team sport. And so one of my brother's friends was actually playing volleyball. And I was like, okay, that looks like it's fun. And then I met a girl in my fifth grade class who had just come to my school that we were in. And her mom introduced my mom to volleyball. She had two older siblings, and it kind of just took off from there. We were teammates all through school. We played a little bit together in club, and her name is Lane. Lane and her family are definitely a big reason as to why I stepped into volleyball and am still playing.
Are there any skills from tennis that transferred into volleyball that helped you make you a better volleyball player?
Yes, I would say the motion of serving is similar to serving in volleyball and also hitting. So I believe that definitely helped me have a strong shoulder to use in volleyball. And then also just shuffling and moving to the ball in tennis is very similar to how you have to shuffle or move to the ball when you're in serve receive or when you're on defense. So I think the two sports, they have a strong correlation. And I believe that's really helped me in my career.
Also, I'm wondering, being an outside hitter, did hitting a lob in tennis, is that kind of similar to hitting a kill in volleyball?
I would say it definitely is similar. Just in tennis, you have a racket to hit for you, and in volleyball, you're using your arm and your hand. But overall, yes, very similar movements.
I may have played a little tennis growing up as well.
Oh, really?
I played a lot of doubles.
For some reason, I didn't like doubles when I was playing tennis.
When was the first time you realized that volleyball could be a path to college, getting an education, and potentially have a pro career?
I would say around the time of my eighth grade year, going into my freshman year in high school, coaches were starting to send me emails and wanted me to come to their camps. And before that, I was honestly just playing for fun. And if I got a scholarship to go to college, then that's great. But after my eighth grade year is when I really started to take it serious and really just tell myself, okay, this can be your route to get a college athletic scholarship and go far in life with volleyball. So I think around my eighth grade, ninth grade year was when I really started to take it serious.
Because your brothers went through the recruiting process before you did, were there any lessons that you learned from their process that you were able to apply to yours?
I would say a big lesson that I learned from their recruiting process and just hearing coaches talk to them would be when I chose a school, make sure that I could see myself at that school, even if I weren't playing volleyball. Because in volleyball or in any sport, honestly, injuries happen and you never know when the ball will get taken away from you. So if you're at that school, can you see yourself attending that school if volleyball or basketball or soccer is not even in the picture? So I think that was a big part of my decision making when I chose a school was, can I see myself at this school in this town in this state even if I'm not playing volleyball?
That's a good way to look at it, because college for an athlete isn't just about on the field, it's about off the field in the classroom and all the experience that college can entail.
Volleyball is a part of it, but there's so much more that comes with it. And I think that's just really important, making sure that you're in the right place.
In terms of your recruiting process, initially you went to North Carolina. What made you decide that that was going to be the best place for you?
So I went to North Carolina because it was a great mix of strong academics and strong volleyball. And not only that, but it's about an hour flight or 7 hour drive from Atlanta. So it wasn't too far, but it also wasn't too close. And then my dad is from North Carolina. So I had a lot of family there. And growing up, we'd always watch the UNC basketball games. And I felt like that was just a great option for me at the time to go there coming out of high school.
I know you only spent 2 seasons there, but What is your favorite story about being on Franklin Street?
Oh, I had a lot of memories on Franklin Street, both my years there. I didn't have a car, so my roommates and I would just always walk everywhere. And if you've been to UNC's campus, it's pretty spread out. Like it can take you 40 minutes to walk from South Campus all the way up to Franklin Street. So I just have a lot of memories of walking there to eat with my teammates, going to parties on Franklin Street. A lot of sweet memories there. I actually got my first tattoo on Franklin Street with one of my teammates. So I would say that might be one of my favorite memories.
Care to say what that tattoo is of?
It's a tiny cross that I have on my ankle. So my first year at UNC, I was redshirted because I tore my ACL a few weeks actually before I was supposed to go to UNC. And so I just always told myself that once I got through the recovery process and once I got back on the court, that I would get a cross on my ankle just to remind myself that no matter what I'm going through, God is always with me and He's my strength. And so that is where that tattoo was gotten on Franklin Street.
That's very cool. And because you said it was your first tattoo, how many tattoos are you up to at the moment?
I only have two. I got one on Franklin Street with my teammate and best friend, and then I got one in Switzerland the day before I left. And that'll probably be it for me. Two is good.
So it's the second one of the Matterhorn. I just have to ask.
No, it's of a flower bouquet.
Well, that's very cool. I like that.
Yeah.
You mentioned you tore your ACL. What was the rehab process for you like?
The rehab process was definitely challenging. It was about 9 months, almost 9.5 months. So I tore my ACL back in May, the last week of high school, actually. I tore my ACL playing powder puff football for like the seniors versus juniors game. And then we actually went to Europe with the UNC volleyball team. We went about 2 weeks later. So I had to go to Europe and walk around on my ACL, which definitely was painful. I didn't really want to walk around on it, but looking back, I think it definitely helped strengthen my leg before I went into surgery and just build up some muscle because when you do tear your ACL, you lose a lot of muscle definition in that area. So that was a big challenge just starting off. And then a few weeks later, I came back and had surgery. And then after surgery, a week later, I started summer school at UNC. So it was definitely a whirlwind. But I would say the rehab process was probably one of the hardest things I've had to do, but it taught me to just be resilient and not give up on the things that you want to achieve. I think the rehab process in the moment was very hard, not something I wanted to do, but looking back, it has made me a better person, has empowered me to be the best athlete that I can be the best person that I can be.
I can totally understand that because through trauma, oftentimes people get stronger, and it sounds like you did.
In a weird way, I'm grateful that I tore my ACL. I know it sounds weird, but I am grateful for that process and who it's turned me into.
I can't imagine what it's like to get around on the UNC campus on crutches because, as you mentioned, it's really spread out. I've been there. That must have been really difficult.
That was brutal. My first few weeks just walking around on crutches. It was summer, so it's hot, 90 degrees, just uncomfortable. But like I said, I think it really was part of why my rehab process went smoothly, just because I was able to build muscle and strengthen that knee and that leg to hold up for the long term.
When you first got back on the court, be it at a practice or in a game, was there any doubt about, at least initially, playing and going, will my knee hold up?
I would say at first there definitely was some doubt, just being scared that, oh, if I land wrong, will I tear it? Or if I make a sudden movement, will I tear it? Like I said, I didn't even tear it playing volleyball, but just the mental part of the rehab, you sometimes doubt yourself because your leg is weak and it's been injured. So I came back in February, but around March, April, I was starting to feel normal and I didn't wear the brace anymore. I felt like the brace was kind of restricting me. So I would say it took me probably 4 to 5 months to finally feel like comfortable and not even think about it when I started to play.
Well, your first season as a redshirt freshman at UNC, you were pretty good. You were an all ACC selection.
Thank you. Thank you.
What was it like to play at UNC? Because UNC is more known as a basketball school for people like me, because I know more about their basketball, football, and baseball as well to a certain extent. But I wasn't that familiar with their volleyball program and had to do a fair amount of reading up on it. What was it like to play there?
Playing there was definitely a lot of fun. I would say that Carolina has a lot of tradition in sports in general. So just being able to wear the Carolina blue jersey and represent that university was a great opportunity in my life. And I think it was a good experience that I had. And it was a lot of fun to just carry the Carolina tradition and play there.
What was your favorite rivalry while you were at UNC?
Oh, Duke for sure. Because Duke and UNC are probably about 15 minutes away from each other, if not even closer. So they were the other blue over there. But I would say Duke was definitely my favorite rivalry.
I know the Duke UNC rivalry, obviously, for basketball, but can you kind of elaborate a little bit more about the, I don't want to call it hatred, but it's a different kind of game when you're playing Duke at UNC than when you're playing a lot of other teams.
Oh, yes, for sure. When you're playing Duke at UNC, it's probably one of the biggest games on your schedule, no matter who you're playing other than them. So I would say there's definitely a deep, I don't want to say hatred either, but a deep rivalry that has run from Carolina to Duke for a very long time. So we definitely took a lot of pride in the games that we played against Duke.
So, what led to your transfer from UNC to Baylor?
I would say I transferred from UNC to Baylor because I wanted to play in a conference that was more competitive on the volleyball side. At the time, the ACC wasn't as competitive as the Big 12. Now, with all the teams mixing up and conferences changing, the ACC is a very competitive conference now. It has probably 6 or 7 teams in the top 25. But when I was there, that wasn't the case. And I was looking for a conference where I could play and compete at a high level, but also get a good education at a great university. And I felt that Baylor was the perfect mix of both of those.
So, and forgive me if I'm wrong here, but the whole transfer process kind of happened during COVID, right?
It happened right before COVID, in around December of 2019, and then COVID hit around March of 2020. So I had got to Baylor for 3 months, and then COVID started, and I went home for 5 or 6 months.
So, for you being a newer player to Baylor, how hard was it to kind of get to know your teammates and coaches, and especially when COVID hits, you can't be around them?
I would say when I first got there in January, it was great because there was no COVID. We could hang out, we could go to each other's houses, go out to lunch, or just go to other sporting events. And I was really gelling with the players and creating relationships with them. And then COVID hit in March around spring break, and we had to go home. And then by the time I came back in end of July, it was like I had to start making some of those relationships all over again just because I had only known them for a short period of time, but I had also been away from them for such a long period of time. And COVID didn't help the situation because at Baylor, we had a rule that we could only hang out with people that we lived with. So if I wanted to hang out with one of my teammates, but she lived in a different apartment, then we couldn't hang out because of contact tracing and all of that came with COVID. So that was definitely a challenge, but we made it work. We made the best of it. And fortunately, by the end of that year, things were kind of changing a little bit. And then going into the spring, we were still testing a lot and tracing people's interactions. But by the time the spring was over, it was kind of back to normal. And even though it was a challenge during the season, we were still able to make connections with one another and hang out in safe ways.
In terms of your first semester at Baylor, how hard was it to complete your academic studies because you had to do it remotely and not in class?
At first, it was kind of hard just because I'd never done online school and just being at home, it kind of felt like I was on summer break, but I was really still in school. So there were times when it was hard to stay motivated to do my work, but everything ended up working out. And by the time that semester ended, I was kind of used to doing online school. And so I took online classes all throughout my time at Baylor after that.
One more COVID question here, and that is, was it nice to just kind of have some extended time around family?
Oh, yes. I would definitely say one of my favorite parts of COVID. It's kind of weird to say favorite parts of COVID, but an enjoyable time was being at home with my parents, and my brother Christian was home too. So we would just spend a lot of time outside, spend time at the pool, swimming, just almost like it was old times back when we were kids. So I definitely enjoyed that. It was a 6 month summer break.
I've had several other guests who've said that their favorite part, strangely, about COVID was just having the chance to be around family again that otherwise they wouldn't have had.
Definitely. If things would have been normal, we probably would spend maybe a week or two in the summer together and then holidays together, and that's about it. But the fact that we got months, that was definitely a blessing.
Playing for Baylor, which is in Waco, was that a little bit of a culture shock for you? Because it's a little bit different than the triangle of Chapel Hill, Durham, and Raleigh.
Yes, I would say it was a little bit different. When I was in the transfer process, I'd heard of Baylor, but I didn't know what Waco was like, so I was a little anxious to see that on my visit. But it's a different town, but it's also a small town, and it gives you like the community feel, and everyone supports everyone there. So while it's not as much of a college town as Chapel Hill was, I still definitely enjoyed it and definitely enjoyed making relationships with the people in that community.
While you were there, did you ever grab a sandwich at Schmaltz's?
Yes, I did. I went there with one of my coaches actually when I first got to Baylor. It was really good.
From your time at Baylor, is there like a favorite game that you have while you were there?
I would say I have two favorite games. One of them was in 2021 when we beat Texas at home, and Baylor and Texas has always been a big volleyball rivalry. So being able to beat them at home was definitely a lot of fun. Just being able to do it with my teammates and the staff. We put a lot of work into that. So that was a big favorite memory. And then the second one would be beating Wisconsin back in 2022. They had just won the national championship the season before. So coming up against them was definitely a big game on our schedule. And then just being able to beat them in 5 sets was a great accomplishment. So that was definitely my second favorite memory.
I won't tell former University of Texas and guest on the show, Asia O'Neill, that you said that about beating them.
No, it's okay. It's all love. Competitive on the court, but off the court, we're cool.
Beating Wisconsin in 5 sets, that was kind of, I would almost say, like a landmark moment because Wisconsin was so good the year before. And to be able to get that accomplishment, I mean, that's something that any team can build off for the rest of the year.
Yes, I'd agree. They were coming off the national championship year. We had lost a lot of seniors. So that year we only had three seniors, me and two other girls, and everyone else were sophomores or younger. So we were a very young group, but we pulled together and we beat them. And that was a highlight of my time at Baylor.
As you mentioned, you were one of three seniors. What was it like to be in that leadership role?
I would say it was very different than my roles in the previous years, just because when I was there, we always had at least 6 or 7 upperclassmen. So it was definitely different. But I think that I embraced it. I learned and I grew a lot as the season went on. But at first, it was kind of different for me. But I liked it as the season went on.
In terms of your leadership style, Are you willing to embrace the speaking part? Because not every leader wants to do that.
I would say I'm more of a lead by my actions. And if I really need to say something, then I will. I have had some seniors in the past who they like to talk and they're good at talking, so that's their leadership style. But I would say I'm more of a lead by example, and if I need to say something, then I will gladly do so.
I would say throughout this podcast that you're a pretty good speaker as well.
Oh, thank you.
You had mentioned early on that you were thinking about getting a job in the real world and then you changed your mind and decided to go play pro volleyball. Was there anything that happened that changed that mental mindset?
I went back to practice with the team at Baylor. I was still on campus and taking classes and stuff. I just hadn't been around the team. And my coach was like, how about you come back and practice with us just for fun? So I went back and I was like, wait, I actually miss this. So I think that was definitely the turning point of when I was like, okay, I want to play professionally and getting a job in the workforce is not my priority right now. So that practice was definitely the key turning point.
Going back here, because I glossed over it in the intro, but really haven't mentioned it here. You were a two-time 4A Player of the Year in Georgia. What was it like to be bestowed that honor not once, but twice?
I would say it's an honor to just be able to represent my school, Woodward Academy. And I think it just goes to show that the program that they've built there and the staff that they've built there has just really blossomed some people into great athletes. They actually made it back to the state championship this year, and one of the players on the team was the player of the year again. So I think it just goes to show how that program really creates some good talent. And I'm just grateful that it's a part of my journey and I got to be honored as player of the year there twice.
Not so much from an athletic standpoint, but for people who are unfamiliar with Woodward Academy, could you kind of talk about a little bit more about what the school is like in general?
So it's a private school in the Atlanta area. They have very good sports, football, volleyball, track, tennis, and I would say it's a very diverse school, people from different religions, races. So I think it really just allowed me to experience that at a young age. And so when I entered college or when I entered the real world, quote unquote, that I was used to being around people who were different from me. So I'm really grateful for that experience. And then just academically, it's a challenging school. It prepared me for college because in college, we have to write 10-page papers, or even sometimes 15-page papers. And we were doing that in high school, and we were taking challenging classes like that in high school. So it definitely prepared me academically. And then just being able to meet and have connections with people who come from different backgrounds. I'm really grateful for that experience.
I only know a couple of alums there, but one of which I think actually might have been there when you were, Elijah Holyfield, who's the son of Evander Holyfield, the famous boxer.
We were there together. He went to Georgia to play football.
And then the other one that I know is a throwback to the 90s was the hip hop group Crisscross went there.
Oh, I actually didn't know that.
They had a famous hit called Jump.
I'm just finding this out, but that's cool. I know the song. I like the song a lot, actually.
Growing up, how much was academic stress in your household as a kid?
I would say probably the number one priority over sports, even. My mom is an attorney and my dad's a surgeon, so they've had their fair share of schooling. And they definitely wanted to make sure that we prioritize schooling. I would say it was probably the number one priority.
Did you have a favorite subject you liked to study?
When I was younger, I used to like the sciences, but then I got to college and I took college level science and I was like, no, this isn't for me. I wanted to be a surgeon, so I had to start off taking like biology and the math courses at UNC. I didn't have the same interest anymore, so I switched to journalism and I really liked the journalism side of things and advertising, public relations. So I just followed that whole track throughout my college education and then my master's as well.
Well, as a journalism major myself, that makes me smile.
Yes, fellow journalist.
After your volleyball career is done, do you have any interest in being in either an ad agency or becoming a journalist?
I would say I do have interest in an ad agency. I studied journalism at Baylor, but my specialty or like my focus was more so advertising. So, yes, I would say there is interest in the ad agency side of things.
Is there a commercial that you've seen, and it could be in the last year, it could be when you were a kid, that really resonated with you that you said, that's a really good commercial and I want to write something like that?
I would say as a kid, when my family and I would watch the Super Bowls, we would always just watch for the football, yes, but also just to see the commercials that come out during that time. And there isn't a specific commercial, but I do know that Budweiser always has a good commercial. And there was a Doritos commercial that came out probably 3 or 4 years ago. I can't remember exactly what it entailed, but the fact that it was a Doritos commercial has just always stuck in my mind that that was a good commercial by that company.
My favorite ad was M&M when they did M&M Candy for the Year 2000 because I love Roman numerals and M&M is 2000.
There was a commercial, I think it was last year or the year before, for like Fubo TV. And in the commercial was someone was pausing the TV, and in real time you thought, did someone just pause the TV? And then the commercial resumes and it's like, oh, this is a Fubo TV ad. I really like that one.
When you're not practicing and on the court and working out and preparing for volleyball, what other things do you like to do?
I like to spend a lot of time outside. So whether that's going for walks in a park or sitting by the pool, I love being outside. And I would say I also like taking pictures. That was something that I did a lot in Switzerland. My dad bought me like a Canon camera before I went over there. And so whenever I traveled, I took it with me and just took a bunch of pictures of the countryside and the scenery and the lakes and things of that nature.
When you get to San Diego, make sure you bring your camera and go to Mission Beach and just get there and watch a sunset. It will be phenomenal. And you will be taking about 50 pictures. I have about 500 of those on my phone.
I've heard a lot of good reviews about Mission Beach, so I'll definitely have to head out there.
The sunsets there are, no offense to any other city in the US, the best sunsets I've ever seen.
Oh, wow, really?
I have one that's like yellow and orange and purple and red, and I swear there's a little bit of black in there, and it's just like, wow.
Wow. I'm looking forward to that then, for
Have you
sure.
been to San Diego before?
I went once when I was younger, but I don't really remember it that much. This will be my first time really getting to experience and explore the city.
You'll like it, and you'll probably say, huh, you know what? Someday I want to live here.
Wow. I'm definitely excited. Everyone that I've talked to about San Diego has said how they love it so much. Every time they get a chance to go back, they take that chance.
Add me to that list. You mentioned you liked hanging out outside and doing stuff outdoors. Where did the love of the outdoors come from?
I would say just growing up as a kid, my siblings and I would spend weeks at a time at my grandparents' house, and she loved the outdoors. When we were kids, she had a really big garden in her backyard, and so we would spend most of our days out there, like picking weeds or planting seeds or picking watermelons or squash or peaches or any type of fruit that had grown. So I think that is truly where I got my love for the outdoors from, just playing out there in the garden. And then after we were done in the garden, she had this kind of like a tin tub, I would say. It was really big. And so we would just get in there and splash around and play around. So my love for the outdoors definitely started during my childhood with my grandparents.
Do you have hopes of one day of having a garden of your own?
I would say yes. Definitely not as big as hers, but I do hope to start a garden one day. My mom has a garden. I guess the green hand just kind of runs in the family. So hopefully I get the good green hand.
My dad is a gardener, and that green thumb did not come to me.
I tried to start a garden on my balcony here in San Antonio, but I think it was just too hot for the plants to grow, so they all withered away. So I'm not going to blame that on my green hand. We're going to blame that on the hot weather.
When you get the chance, because with your schedule, it's pretty busy, do you like to binge watch anything?
I would say every now and then. I just got done binge watching Love is Blind on Netflix. It's kind of cheesy, but it's entertaining at the same time. So I like watching Love is Blind when the new series come out.
I have to admit, I'm not that familiar with it. So could you kind of tell me a little bit more about what Love is Blind is about?
Yes, so basically they're about 8 women and then 8 men. And so they go into these pods and they talk to the guys and the guys talk to the girls and they get to meet them and get to know them just based off who they are, and looks are not a part of it at all. So you get to know the person, their personality, where they came from, things of that nature. And then if you feel like you really connecting with them, the guy will ask the girl, like, will you marry me? And so they get engaged. And then after they're engaged, they finally get to see what the other person looks like. And then after that, they go like on a honeymoon, and then they get to see the other girls that they didn't get engaged with. So that can sometimes cause drama. And then after that, they like introduce their families to one another, and then they get married. And sometimes people have said, like, no, I'm not going to marry you once they got to the altar. Or sometimes people kind of break it off before it even gets time to go down the altar. So that's the concept of the show.
To me, it sounds like kind of a reality TV show. Do you like reality TV in general?
I watch it every now and then, yes. I don't watch TV that much, to be honest with you, but when I do, it's probably a reality show like Love is Blind or something of that nature. Sometimes I can't sit and just watch a serious show for too long. I'll get bored.
Oh, I take it you're not a movie person as far as that goes, too, right?
Not really. I'm more of a comedy movie or a romance movie, but when it's a movie that I have to actually sit and focus on to understand, then it's not really my type of thing.
I'm a huge comedy movie fan. What's a favorite comedy movie that you go to make you laugh?
Grown Ups or anything Adam Sandler, honestly.
Happy Gilmore for me was always my favorite.
Yep, that's a good one too.
Lauren, I want to thank you so much for coming on the I Play 2 podcast today and talking about your time playing in Switzerland, playing for UNC and Baylor, hearing about your fun family trips to your grandmother's. Thank you so much. Take care and best of success in San Diego this upcoming season.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me on the show. I really enjoyed it.